22 council meeting. Let us please stand for the invocation by Dallas Barbie, Surrender Studio Barbering Ministry.
You guys have been, Biloxi in general has been incredible. My husband and I moved here from Washington State in October, and we are really happy to be here and getting involved in the community. If you guys want to bow your heads, I'd love to say a prayer. Lord, we just come to you in thankfulness and gratefulness that we have the freedom to come and stand in meetings like this and discuss problems and solutions as a community. God, your word tells us that we're to love you with our heart, our soul, our mind, but the second is just as important, and we're to love our neighbor as ourselves. Lord, I just ask that your spirit fills this room tonight, and as we come here with problems and to solve problems, that we remember that we are to treat our neighbor the way that we treat ourselves. Not our Republican neighbor or our Democratic neighbor, our white neighbor, or our black neighbor, rich neighbor, poor neighbor. It says our neighbor, that's all of us. God, I just pray that you give all of us the courage to speak up for what we're believing in, but also to be humble enough to be kind to each other. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
All right, thank you, Ms. Barbie. Would Robert Deming III lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you once again, and we appreciate you, Ms. Dallas Barbie, for rendering a great prayer. Thank you. Ms. Carey, would you read the amendment of the agenda, please?
Need a motion first.
We're going to need a motion for the amendment of the agenda. Moved by Mr. Lawrence.
Second.
Second by Dr. Tisdale. Any unreadiness? There being none, all in favor? 5-0 vote. 6-0 vote. Thank you. Ms. Carey?
To the consent agenda, we're removing item 5M, resolution authorizing landlord consent to lease encumbrance for Riverboat Corporation of Mississippi. Adding 5N, resolution amending the municipal budget for $50,000 for MGM Park Baseball Stadium repairs. Adding 5O, resolution authorizing an application 2022 to the MDOT Emergency Road and Bridge Repair Fund. Adding 5P, resolution authorizing an agreement with ESO Solutions for Motorola computer-aided dispatch.
I need a motion on the amended agenda.
Second.
Moved by Dr.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence, second by Dr. Tisdale. Any unreadiness? There being none, all in favor? 6-0. Motion carried. Okay, Mayor's report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I want to welcome everybody here to our May meeting, beginning of May, a great month. And like to begin, before I forget, let me ask you to spread the expenses of the Biloxi travel credit card to the minutes. Geneva, if you're ready, give us a great Economic Development Foundation update. Geneva Duma. Thank you, Geneva. No. We know you.
Mic working?
Wait a minute, let me, wait, just gotta press the back. It went.
You can use your outside voice.
So it's my pleasure to visit you guys this evening as Vice President of the Greater Biloxi Economic Development Foundation. We wanted to express our appreciation for the allocation of funds to continue the mission and purpose of the Economic Development Foundation, which is, of course, to spur and promote economic development, community development, and other positive growth for the city of Biloxi and the greater Biloxi area. Sorry, y'all know I get nervous doing this. So we wanted to thank you for the reimbursement of the funds that we spent for the Crest Alley renovation program. We contributed to that effort. And then we also contributed to the to update the multifamily market study that has several years old, so it needed some new data, and we helped provide that. So just thank you for believing in us and helping us rise from the ashes that the program was in. We've revamped the bylaws, made a few changes, and some improvements. And if anybody has any questions or specific projects, we would love to hear from you.
Okay,
Thank you,
any
Janine.
questions?
Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to ask Chief Miller to come give us a public safety update.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate the council's time. I just wanted to talk about a few things that were said last week about the Rachel Drive and Terrace Court incident. And look, I fully understand that when an incident like that takes place, a lot of things are lost in perception. It at times stands still for a lot of people. Well, it doesn't for law enforcement, and it certainly doesn't for the dispatchers. And I just wanted to go over a few things that were said that I wanted to correct if I could. So the initial call came in at 11:08. That's the first 911 call. That was followed by 17 more calls within 2 minutes, all 911 calls. That was followed by a total of 36 911 calls over the period of the incident. And if you add the calls that rolled over to Harrison County, you're looking at 48 911 calls within probably 20, 25-minute time period. Some of those calls were still coming in when officers were on scene. So people just did not see them or did not perceive that law enforcement was there, and they were still calling, but they were there. That was at 11:08 when the first call came in. So there were several statements concerning how long it took officers to respond, and I'd like to cover that. And all of this, it took me a little while today to figure it out, because certainly there's different time stamps on different elements of the software that we use. So it took me a little while to narrow it down and get absolutely accurate, because I wanted to give you absolutely accurate numbers. So like I said, first 911 call is at 11:08. The first officer to respond was an officer that lives right there. So he was there at 11:09. At 11:09, we know that officer was there within 1 minute on foot. Now, he's not in uniform, but he's on foot, and he's the first policeman there. At the time the call was dispatched, there were several officers dealing with a fight at the Coliseum, and then 2 officers were on a call at Crane Ridge, which is right there near Fire Station 6. At 11:10, remember, came in at 11:08. At 11:10, officers were responding from those calls to the shooting scene. We also had officers that were coming from Beat 2, headed, and it's easier for them to get there quicker because they'll go up, hit the interstate, and come down Pops Ferry. 11:10, those officers were responding. At 11:13, the D'Iberville officer was out with the shooting victim in the car on Brody Road. That car had taken off, and he was able to get it stopped after the information went out. So that car was stopped at 11:13. Again, the initial call came in at 11:08. By 11:15, there's officers on the scene, several officers on the scene. By then, they've already located, by 11:15, they're already locating witnesses, establishing a crime scene, and collecting evidence. So you can see there wasn't a delay in law enforcement getting there. All this is documented. This is nothing that I'm pulling out of my mind. This is absolutely the numbers. And by 11:27, AMR is on scene, and the victim is being prepared to transport. So any questions before I move on about the time for officers' response? And again, I'm certainly not saying that anyone was making anything up. I just know perception, and I know that when you're in the midst of a high-stress situation, a minute can seem like a half hour. It really can. It amazes me. There were also statements made that many calls were made to the police department on several occasions regarding the residents at 847 Terrace Court. So I went in, I just wanted to see how many calls had been made in the past complaining about that particular residence. So what I found, there was 16 calls in the area of Rachel Court and Terrace Rachel Drive and Terrace Court in the past year. Now, we're not talking about anything with the incident, just those calls. Only 16 calls in that area, and I'm going to run through them real quick. One was a 911 hang-up. One was there was 6 alarm calls. There was 2 animal control calls. There was 1 call to assist another agency, which was probably the county, and they probably had a warrant or something. There was 1 city ordinance violation, which was a follow-up. There was a disturbing the peace call, 1. There was a medical emergency call, 1. There was a parking violation, 1, and there was two times that folks had called and asked for a Slim Jim to come out and unlock their car. So we don't have a lot of, there wasn't a lot of violent activity from that area, and that was for 12 months. So if I move into the Hinge and Place neighborhood, it's almost identical. There were 17 calls for service over the past year, and if you exclude a couple of calls for traffic that they wanted to make, if you exclude those 2 calls for traffic, and certainly, don't let me mislead you, there were several calls to me personally that aren't here about traffic issues and people speeding in that area. But other than that, there were 2 suspicious circumstance calls, 8 alarm calls, 1 animal control call, 2 medical emergency calls, 1 fraud call, extra patrol, 2 extra patrols, and 1 city ordinance follow-up. All right. So I say all that to say that the dispatchers, who have a horrible job to begin with, it really is. It takes a special person to do it. That probably half hour for them, they worked like a well-oiled machine. When people were calling and no one was picking up, it's because they were in the process of dispatching that call. They can answer a 911 call, maybe 2 at a time, that's it. We appreciate the folks that continued to let the phone ring until we could answer, because we did want their information. But you have to understand, in a shooting or any type of major incident like that, those calls are pouring in. The first thing they try to do is get that information away from the first person that's calling in as detailed as they can, and keep in mind, while they're getting that information, they're logging it into the CAD system. We're not just sitting there writing it down. It's actually going into the CAD system where officers can actually see it in a short time in their car. So that's all going on at that time. So I know that there were some delays in them answering 911, but not a delay in them responding. As soon as they got the first 911 call, there were people responding then. So I just wanted to explain that delay when people are dialing and there's a whole bunch of people calling 911 to the tune of 36 calls at one time, basically, like I said, within that 20-minute time frame. It takes a little while to get to all of them, so we would ask that people would, continue to let their phone rings. And then as far as the officers went, I thought it was very noble that the officer's off duty. And there's a 911 call of his wife, who actually was calling 911 for us, and you can hear her, and he probably doesn't want me to tell you this, but you can hear her tell him he doesn't need to go. Let people on duty handle it. But he went out anyway. Very admirable, and I'll be talking to him about that. And then last but not least, there was a party planned several weeks before on the 23rd at that residence. The same officer who lives there had found out about it. He saw a flyer. He went by the house and confronted the lady there and told her of the liability issues of her having this kind of party. So the party on the 23rd was canceled. So this party that a lot of people said we knew about on the night in question, we did not. I had recently found out that one of our officers had seen some cars there earlier, but it wasn't enough cars for him to be concerned about. And I guess that's it. If there's any questions, I just wanted to get those things out there, and I wanted the council, and I know the mayor and Mr. Leonard already understand. I just wanted to give those details to the council so you'd have a full understanding of what went on and the length of time we actually took to get there.
I have a question for you. I want to start by saying that we appreciate the job you do, how hard it is, and not just you, but the men that are underneath you, and especially the men and women that are in dispatch. I can imagine addressing the phone calls that would come in every day. I would have a hard time surviving through life had I been the person answering those kind of phone calls. But the one question that wasn't answered with your statistics is how many phone calls came in prior to the 11:08 911 shot about the house? Had people from the neighborhood called with concerns about the size of the party had grown into, the amount of cars, the amount of people in that one house?
No.
There was no previous knowledge by
The-
police department or already had grown out of them?
No, none that I can find. And I don't believe that they're there because, like I said, if something comes in, it's catted. It's not like you can just erase it. It's catted as it comes in. If it's a complaint of any kind, it automatically goes into the system. So there were none of those complaints, but there were three, and I may have mentioned this, there were three 911 hangups just prior to the call that we got saying, hey, there's a shooting here. So I'm thinking that people were dialing 911 probably at the very time this was taking place and hung up. And I think a lot of people think that if they dial 911 that we're coming, but it's a different age with cell phones. It's a little bit different setup. So there were three of those that came through, like I said.
The proximity of that 11.
That was about the same time, right? So if that first call came in at 11:08, those were probably in between 11:05 and 11:07 where those calls came in.
And thank you. And everyone, I don't know if anybody else has questions.
Thank you, Mr. Deming. Dr. Tisdale?
Yes, just some comments, Chief. I know at every ward meeting that I have, without fail, you remind everybody, hey, we'd rather you call us if there's something suspicious than just think, well, there's nothing to it and not call at all. And I'm thinking of several things. One is an incident like this, particularly if you have a homeowner with these parties, but also short-term rentals if the guests are rowdy during some event. But they should be calling the police to establish a paper trail for just this reason right here. So that if you have a homeowner or a business person or an incident or a series of incidents, that it's well established so that you can keep an eye on the place, so that you can have people check it out. And I know that neighbors are reluctant to make a call in their neighborhood sometimes, but again, you'd rather be safe than sorry. And it's certainly no more than a few seconds just to give you a call and let you know.
Absolutely, and like you said, we ask people all the time to call us if you don't think something's right, give us a call. Some people do, some don't. You also have to keep in mind that on any given weekend in the city of Biloxi, there's a bunch of parties going on, private parties at residences, and most of them never get out of hand. But we get plenty of calls about loud music and just, it's really not that big of a party, but we still go and we still tell the people there's been a complaint, you're gonna have to turn your music down. It at least gives us an opportunity to find out who the homeowner is or who's hosting the party. So yes, always call, always let us know. You're not gonna overburden us, we'll deal with it.
I've always heard you say, if you see something, say something.
Say something.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Chief Miller.
Sir.
Okay.
I would like to thank you, Chief, for the things.
Mr. Barrett, you have any questions for Chief?
No comment.
Okay, Ms. Newman?
All right.
Mr. Lawrence, any questions for the chief? No. Okay.
I
Thank you,
wanted
Chief.
to echo that, for 7 years, I've always been proud of you and the dedication that your whole team has, and it's very complex and a situation that you've been in there a number of times, including the past few days, and we're proud of you, and we'll do whatever, your guidance has told us through, whatever occasion. So, Chief, we're here, and we're proud of you, and the citizens are proud of you, too. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that concludes the mayor's report and the departmental reports. We're going to move on to section C, the council reports. Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, Pete, I need to ask you a couple of legal questions. We had a couple of short terms that we changed addresses for. So I need to find out, can you actually change an address for a short-term rental? Is that legal? And whose authority we have to change these addresses? And we have one at Avalon that was before the council and it was denied. And that was, the house was built to specs to Avalon. Now it's back. Yes,
that on
back
for
on
today?
it's back on the table. It's back on the table to change the address to St. George. And the house was built according to the specs for Avalon.
Okay,
It's not on there. I'm just asking you a legal question.
okay.
I'm just bringing this up.
I was wondering how much time I had to give you an answer.
Say again?
Just wondering how much time I had to give you an answer, but it's going to the planning commission, you say?
Right.
Okay.
And Jerry may have an explanation to the original address and that sort of thing, I believe. Jerry?
The addresses are assigned in our department, and typically the addresses are a no-brainer because you have a house that faces a certain street, and there's no question about what the address should be. Now, for a very brief period of time, there were a couple of addresses that were assigned wrong. We heard one just a few weeks ago, that was assigned to Jeff Davis when the house clearly faced Beach Boulevard. And in this particular case, the one that Mr. Lawrence is referring to, the address was mistakenly addressed to Avalon, which it never should have been addressed to Avalon. It is a two-story house that actually faces Beach Boulevard, but it happens to be on a lot behind an existing house. So what should have happened is that address should have been assigned to the nearest main street, nearest the face of the structure, not on Avalon. It should have always been assigned to St. George. And that's what we did. We made the correction on it. It has been assigned to St. George now.
Just a quick question on that one, Abakuga. Was that the lot that was subdivided, that was initially on Beach Boulevard?
That's correct.
But they ended up subdividing it?
Yes, it's at the corner of Beach Boulevard and St. George, yes.
Well, let's get a couple things straight. The house was built on Avalon. The house faces Avalon. So there wasn't any mistake in building it. If you put it on St. George, you couldn't do the 20-foot setback. So if you do that and change the address.
That's not correct, Mr.
Foot setback.
Yeah, that's
So
not
you have
correct.
13 feet of the house need to be taken down.
That Avalon is the rear of the house, not the face of the
No, that's
house.
face.
Face of the house
There's
faces
no
Beach
face in
Boulevard.
St. George, none. Absolutely nothing.
That's not
I've
correct.
been out there several times with you, and the house was always built on Avalon for that spec. So if you change the address to St. George, then you got to take 13 feet of the house off of there for the setback. It could not be built facing St. George because of that reason.
Okay.
And that's why it was built. So you can't go changing laws in between these things. There was no reason for the house ever to be St. George. It was always built.
The purpose for assigning the addresses to the common sense location is to make sure that our emergency vehicles can find them in the event that there's an emergency. And the
That's
closest
illegal.
main street to the face of this house is St. George.
The house faces Avalon. There's no front door on St. George. You go out there and look at it right now.
Okay.
So if you made a mistake by doing that, to try to change it, there's no St. George, no dress, no interest. Everything is on Avalon, and the house was built to that spec. And you couldn't build a house on St. George. If you'd have done that, it'd have been 20 feet from the back of the property line. It's not. It's 7 feet. So if you change it, then we're going to have to request that they take 13 feet of that house off of there, because it does not face St. George. And put in a concrete, it's not an interest. I just want to make sure that Peter understands what's going on.
What's
There
the
was no
address?
mistake. There was no
I'll get the
mistake.
address and
There was no
I'll make a
mistake
ruling
in
for
the
you.
address.
Yeah.
I'll get the address.
Okay, anything else, Ms.
I
Lawrence?
just want to make sure I get a report back.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Dillon?
1501 Avalon. It's right on the corner of Avalon and St. George. It's, do you see it?
Big screen.
Good. Okay, thank you. Dr. Tisdale?
Yes, a couple of things. Hopefully, if somebody's watching this video at home, I'm told the sound system was tweaked a little bit, so hopefully it'll be better this week than it's been the last couple of weeks. Also, I know CSX is doing a lot of repair work, and I know with B-Alert, we get notices if you have that application on your phone. But I got to tell you, just coming down this way, this crossing's supposed to be open, and it's not. The arms are going up and down as the rail equipment's going back and forth. Just worried about the first responders, first of all. And, you know, some of the crossings are closed because they're doing the work. They're closed probably for several days, replacing the asphalt and all that stuff. But some of these other crossings, it's just the arms go up and down, a couple of cars will go through, but,
We're equally concerned. We didn't get but 12 hours notice that when they were going to start. Then when they told us they were going to start, they didn't start till a day later.
right.
They've got a pretty deliberate process of, you know, the little machines that A does, pulls the pipe, you know, next one does the thing, nothing does things. We get a call every morning telling us the crossings that they plan to have closed. And we pass those on to Public Affairs, and Public Affairs prints them. If we get a notice during the day that there's a change, we try and get it out on the B alert. I guess the best news is we probably got 2 days left. I mean, they've already done the Bs.
We can only hope, and I'm not faulting the city. I just know that CSX is difficult to deal with at times, and I know we're reacting as best we can. I just know it's frustrating out there, but like I said, if you've got a fire in West Biloxi, you may get to the crossing and find it closed, open, or the arms down with a line of traffic. So I'm not knocking it. I don't know what we can do with CSX, but it's frustrating.
Other concern to us is the height of the rail when they finish.
Yeah.
Because it seems apparent to the naked eye that they've gone up a little bit more. Now, we're going to survey the Main Street. We've got the most recent Main Street survey. We'll be able to survey Main Street as soon as they're out of the way, and we'll talk to CSX about here we go, raising the tracks again.
Exactly, and fact, as I recall, at Main Street, incrementally over the years, the height of that crossing, as I recall, did increase every time they did some work on it. Not much, but over several repair jobs. Now it's 4 inches higher, and that creates some issues.
The best news for Main Street is day before yesterday, we got the authority to advertise from MDOT. So we will now be going out to bid on the Main Street crossing project.
That's a good thing. Okay, thank you. Like I said, I'm not knocking the administration. I know we have to react as best we can under the circumstances. Next thought is, we use several different online payment solutions. I think the water department has, or do we use just one online system?
I'm not sure that we use in the water department, but
We use something in the water department.
waiting what our options are on the, you know, a single payer situation. There's some things
Right.
when it comes to court, we're in the middle of an evaluation on, you know, how the different systems will interface each other. That's a
I just think
dynamic
it'd be
thing.
great if we had just one system that was universal and everybody could deal with that. But I'm leaving that up to y'all. I was just curious about that.
No Bitcoin, though. No Bitcoin at this time.
That's, no what?
No Bitcoin or
No, we don't want, no Bitcoin. Thank you so much. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tisdale. Mr. Baird?
Just a couple of things. I went out to the park yesterday. The fence around the pickleball court and the basketball court looked great, and great crowd out there playing. I wanted to check, I know the pavilion, the new company is on the agenda tonight. Do we have any type of time frame on that with them?
Well,
Or,
we'll be able to, you will approve that tonight, I assume. After that's approved, the mayor and the president of the council will sign the resolution, and we'll award that contract. So they'll be working by the end of the week.
okay. And then
And that's a company that we know pretty well.
okay, and then the third thing was, I know you were going to check on the parking lot about them making sure all the weeds were killed
Right.
and
We told-
everything.
We told Parks and Recs to go out and spray it one more time before the paving.
So do we have a time frame on the parking lot being paved? I know that we had, the reason I'm asking is, I know that there's a big event scheduled, a movie night with food trucks and stuff for May 27th. I was just going to see if there was any way that that would be a possibility prior to then.
I'll make a call to Warren in the morning and see if they're ready. We've run into a real predicament with our paving contract. As you know, we have a primary and an alternate.
Yeah.
The alternate mallet got bought out, and they've been absorbed under Stockstill out of Hancock County, who are just coming up to speed now and got all the paperwork out of the way about assuming their work. And Warren, in the meantime, is kind of slow rolling us a little bit because of the price of fuel, and they really hate to take a job they're going to lose money on. So we've been, we're kind of in a difficult spot with them, trying to twist their arm, make sure that Stockstill, for example, is now the contractor that's going to be paving Division Street. They just coming out of nowhere, we were going to have mallet all this time. So
Well, if it's
we're
just something we
kinda-
can check on and just see if it's a possibility
Yeah.
before the 27th.
I'll call Joel Moody first thing in the morning and see when they're scheduled.
Okay, and then the last thing that I have is the AT&T fiber lines. There's some yards that were significantly messed up in Eagle Point, and I know that the contractor came out there last week and they promised that they were going to have someone come out and fix it. If there's just a way that we can follow up to make sure whoever in engineering or whatever that's over that can follow up and make sure that that happens.
Yeah, well, Jody Ewing is the point of contact, and he's been in the field checking on them. And we're not letting them move on to do other areas until they've satisfied us in those areas that they've already done.
Okay.
So he tries to go out and meet with everybody that's unhappy and
Okay. All right.
look at their job.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. I have three things. First, I want to give a shout out to Mississippi Power. They were changing all the lights in the community of Ward 2, and they were doing a fantastic job. All the energy efficient lights, they were out there replacing them for the last 2-3 days, so I appreciate their work. Mr. Leonard, you answered my question about the Main Street crossing, so I appreciate that information. And I just want to let the mayor know I had dinner this evening with Trina George from the USDA, and I look forward to filling you in on our conversation. Thank you. That concludes my comments. I did omit one thing, the tree committee making a presentation introducing the Majestic Tree program. So would they come up and please present that presentation prior to the citizen comments?
All right, bring this closer so y'all can hear me. Okay, good, we've got that going on. Good evening, I am Christine Davis. I represent Ward 6 on the Biloxi Tree Committee. And what we are introducing tonight is what I consider a living legacy, the Biloxi Majestic Tree Program. We did have it added to the LDO this year, earlier in March. And as it says there, trees having or showing impressive beauty and dignity, whether cultural, historical, or as a natural resource, making them worthy enough to warrant additional scrutiny in the permitting process in order to protect the asset for the future. Our trees are assets, both in the environmental aspect as far as the air we breathe, providing shade, dealing with water, but also in the way of us becoming one of those walking communities. It's something to look at and something to appreciate that way. So the program history is not new. It did, in fact, was conceived and back in 1972 as a Mississippi program.
If you do the math, then you know that this is going to be the golden anniversary for it. And so it started a few years after Camille. And surprisingly enough, you'll notice that in the 70s, the decade following it, we had the most trees enrolled in it, and with 92 of them. And then for some reason in the 80s, it fell off a little bit, had a little bit of interest peak again in the 90s, and then with the new millennium, things fell off again. Prior to Hurricane Katrina, we did have over 130 trees that were designated, but since then, we've only had one. And that occurred in 2020. So we haven't had any in a long time. And we're really hoping that y'all can help us get that resurrected and moving in the right direction. So why would any of us want to designate a tree as a majestic tree? Well, again, it's a privilege and it's an honor to designate a majestic tree. It's honoring Biloxi. It's honoring where we live, where we do work, and it honors those of us who who promote and protect and grow the trees. An individual can have that role in carrying on the heritage of Biloxi. I know that there are neighboring cities that have some very well-known trees, and they get a lot of visitors and recognition. Lastly, once designated, those trees will receive an extra layer of protection. And what that means is that during the permitting process, an arborist with a special certification is required to actually review the tree and its history as to whether or not approval can be given for anything to occur with that tree. The process is okay, I'm sorry. Who is available? Who can do this? Well, obviously, in the city of Biloxi. So residents on property can have their own tree designated, but also anyone can nominate on public property. I believe there's one right around this building somewhere that y'all might be familiar with. And it is going to be requested that y'all vote on it at the end of my presentation. So the tree committee can help anyone go through the process. It's really not that difficult. Okay. So step one is to go through the Mississippi designation. Okay, the Garden Clubs of Mississippi, you'll forgive me, I haven't spoken French since the Society of Trees designates it as a majestic tree for the state of Mississippi. The form is available on their website. There should be a link as well on the tree committee site, and it takes no time to fill it out. It's fairly straightforward. And so you pay a small donation and submit it, and then they go through the process of verifying everything, and they will issue a certificate if it is approved. So step two, once you get that certificate, then you fill out the Biloxi Majestic Tree Designation form. There is no additional cost, and again, it's another easy form to fill out. Once we have that majestic tree, well, we want to have it be a Biloxi tree, not just a Mississippi tree. So the information is on the website. There's 10 questions. You provide a picture of your tree. At the Society de Bois issue, and then digitally and submit it. So it's fairly straightforward, but if anybody needs assistance, then the tree committee, all 7 of us are available to assist. The 4 kind of go together. The tree would receive those forms, review and verify that they do in fact meet the requirements to be recognized by the city, and we'll ask to have it put on the agenda, invite the person whose tree it is or who nominated the public tree, and vote on it, hopefully designate the tree, and then we'll get it put on the website so that if you want to go around town and find the trees or see, you know, how many trees we might have, it will be available as well. Okay, so what's the city's role, Mr. Mayor? Is to approve the designations, put it before your council, provide or sponsor a map with GPS for the designated trees. And this one I want to kind of point out that we have requested this because we had these 130 trees that we tried to go back and relocate. And unfortunately, some of the addresses that were listed were like the Little Sisters of Mercy Convent. Now, I don't know if any of y'all know about that convent, but it's not here anymore. And I believe it was located where there is a parking garage now for the hospital. Some others have similar addresses like that, and we just were not able to find them. So back in '72, back in the '80s, you know, GPS was not something being done, and you know, it is now. You know, y'all were using your phones earlier to try to locate something. We drop a pin, and you know, we can go find it. And then also, the last thing would be to help uphold that on protections. So if a majestic tree does become an issue for growth in the city, or you know, God forbid, a hurricane come or something like that, and it needs to be taken down, then it does require, in addition to the regular process, to have a track certified arborist. And I'm not sure if Eric is a holder of that additional certificate or not. I didn't get a chance to talk with him, so I'm not sure if he would be available for that, or if we'd have to hire someone else. Okay. So the committee's role. What are we doing? We're asking the city to do something. We are in the process of educating ourselves. Each one of us has a minimum goal to get a tree designated majestic in each of your wards. Of course, I'm in Ward 6 and Kenny's not here, but I would like to do a little bit of a competition amongst y'all. You know, this time next year, you know, who's got the most majestic trees? It's incredible if you've seen a majestic tree. And I don't know, maybe I need to backtrack a little bit, you know, educate our neighbors and the general public on the process. We've got an educational brochure and some articles. We're putting together the brochure and trying to get some articles out there. But a majestic tree is no less than 9.5 feet in circumference. So their waistline, 4.5 feet above the ground, has to be 9.5 feet. So that's pretty big. I mean, we see some big trees, but this is not a tree that, you know, anyone could literally, you know, hug, but they're quite substantial, and it takes them a long time to get there, and it takes 100 years. So it's kind of a big deal. And assisting our neighbors and the general public with the process, absolutely, the process is easy. All of us are listed on the website for the tree committee. Contact us, you know. I'd be glad to take y'all out with the really long tape measure and help you do the math. It's very, very simple to have it done. All right, so what can the council members do? Call us, compete with each other, help print these educational brochures once we get them designed and approved. We welcome any kind of input from you in the design of it. And also, if you can maybe tell us, does the city have the ability to do the GPS tracking for us on the trees? I know you have to have a GIS for GPS.
Layer of information, which, we have 77 layers of information in GIS, which covers the whole gamut, but I can see where that's doable.
Okay, excellent, excellent, thank you. So that's the big thing is y'all get excited about it, get your constituents excited about it, and then, we can get them out there walking around looking for the trees. There's a lot of poker runs out there, let's have a Majestic Tree run, okay? Next, please. All right, so links and contact info. Again, Society of Trees or Société des Arbois, I think that's correct. Tree Committee website is on the city's website. Contact person, I am the central person designated with this undertaking. And we're also working a little bit with the Mississippi State Extension, the Master Naturalist Program. They help volunteer, and so they could have assistance for us or for your folks as well. If you know any master naturalists, please direct them to that volunteer process and have them get in touch with us. I'm a master naturalist, so have them get in touch with me. All right, our next. All right, so what you got to do tonight? I need y'all to vote tonight. We have 2 majestic trees we would like you to vote on and make our first and second majestic trees. This first one, you can see the certificate from the Society of Trees. It's a really big one. It's very, very nice. It's got the tree number and the certificate number on it. But this tree here it was certified in 2020. It's estimated at 125 years old. It was here way before me. At the diameter at breast height, which is the 4.5 feet high off the ground, is 45 inches. So it's well over the 3 feet that it should be. Congratulations, Mr. Lawrence. It is in your ward. The private property owner, again, is in Ward 1 and has designated this tree as the healer. I don't know if Tracy's here tonight or not, but it's a magnificent sight to behold. Our next one is the tree that I was alluding to earlier that's near this building. It was originally recognized back in 1976. Currently, it is estimated to be about 296 years old. So I'm pretty impressed with that. I hope y'all are as well. It made it through Camille. It made it, it didn't make it through, the tree itself made it through Camille, and it made it through Katrina. So that's impressive to me. My house did not make it through Katrina, but this tree did. The diameter, okay, that's not wrapping around it. This is the diameter. This is doing this action. Is 67 inches wide. I'm 5 feet tall, which is 60 inches, and that's 7 inches taller than I am. So the girth on that is probably around, I don't know, 12 or 13 feet. Again, it's in Ward 1. Congratulations again, Mr. Lawrence. You will have 2, and the others will have none at the end of this. And of course, it is public. It's named for Danny Geis, and the Biloxi City Hall owns it. So those 2 trees, we are asking you to take a vote and consider designating them numbers 1 and 2 on the Biloxi Majestic Tree Program. And answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. Any questions from the council, Dr. Tisdale?
No, just a comment. I mean, I don't know that we can vote on anything until we have a program established. And that it would be something on the agenda, perhaps coming from the administration or the council for that matter, but I don't know that we vote on anything tonight. All we know is what you've told us tonight.
Okay, well, the tree program is in effect. The items are on the website, so then I will just simply ask to have these 2 trees put on the agenda for the June meeting, which I understand is quite full, but we will still ask.
Let me ask Mr. Creel, do we have anything in the LDO about a Majestic Tree program?
She's correct.
Okay.
The process is in there, and she just went over the process. That is correct.
Right, and so if we had a resolution, then we'd have something to vote on, I think.
Yeah, I would think it would need to be on the agenda.
Exactly.
So you would bring us one by one, the ones you want to put on a resolution, you're gonna recommend those
Yes.
trees, okay?
Okay.
That would be fine. Thank you, Mr. Creel.
Okay, any other questions from the council? Yeah. All right, thank you again, the tree committee, thank you for your report. Okay, we're gonna move on to the public agenda, citizen comments. We have a total allotted time of a total of 45 minutes, 3 minutes per person. I'm going to ask, and the 3 minutes are strictly enforced. So that being said, anyone on my left would like to come up at this time? Ms. Daniels? Everyone that come up, please sign in. Please sign in before you start speaking. Thank you.
You ready?
Okay, great.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gines, council members, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you all this evening. 2 subdivisions were part of an unfortunate act which occurred last Saturday evening. That included Hingham Place and Pops Ferry Landing subdivisions. Both subdivisions were obviously stunned at the occurrences. However, it appears that one subdivision is being targeted as the quote-unquote blame. It has come to our attention that members of Hingham Place want to construct and erect a gate to separate themselves from the Pops Ferry Landing subdivision. This is not the first attempt at this. The reasoning behind this proposal is unjust and borderlines a segregation attempt. Mr. Mayor and City Council, I can only hope that you have not made a decision preemptively based on the occurrences and information from a few instead of from hearing from the masses first. There are several members of our community who utilize the back entrance of Pops Ferry Landing to gain access to Brody Road. Let's not forget the safety aspect and access of EMR and the Biloxi Police Department in the event of an emergency. I.e., last Saturday evening, there was a young girl, 16 years old, who was injured, and the back entrance of Pops Ferry Landing was utilized through Hanging Place to access her, it is my understanding, and to quickly and expeditiously get her back to Biloxi Merit Hospital. My ask is that you please think thoroughly through the entire scenario, carefully, prior to making any rushed decisions. There are 2 subdivisions that are being affected here and that are at bay here, part of this discussion. So we ask that you fairly and openly, unjudgmentally, listen to both sides and understand the concerns of both sides. We need to unify. We don't need to separate. There are ways to address the issues and the concerns besides erecting a gate or a wall to separate the two. So I ask that each of you think very carefully prior to coming to any type of decision based upon the information that you've heard from me tonight, but that I'm sure you're going to hear from other members of my beautiful, outstanding subdivision, Pops Ferry Landing, tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on my left that would like to come up? Anyone else on my left?
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Terry Fairley, and I'm back again. So first I want to thank the Chief of Police for those numbers that he brought earlier. I hope that you all heard the same thing I heard when he said that the difference between the number of calls received in 12 months between the 2 neighborhoods was 16 and 17, with Hanging Place receiving 1 more call than us. By us, I mean Pops Ferry Landing. 16 and 17 calls in a 12-month period. It's a very safe neighborhood. They're both very safe neighborhoods, and we want to keep it that way. Putting up a wall or a gate to block our access to Brody, that doesn't accomplish that. I was very disheartened to hear that some people are in favor of that. I was very disheartened to hear that certain members of council had already met with the other neighborhood before even speaking with us, checking in with us, seeing if we were okay since the incident took place in our community, 1 block away from my house where my son sleeps at night. It is much safer for us to travel to the school, taking a right-hand turn on Brody Road, than it is to cross over 2 lanes of traffic, sometimes 3, to make a left-hand turn on Pops Ferry, if we're talking about safety. It is much safer to take a shortcut, if that's what you want to call it, but it's not really a shortcut. That's public road that my tax money, their tax money paid for. It's much safer for us to travel that way when we live on the south end of Pops Ferry Lane, to get to the hospital, which I've had to do for the sake of my son, to get to the school, to get here, to get anywhere south of our subdivision. It is much safer to go that route. Not talking about convenience. It is that too, but it's much safer. I shouldn't have to pay for a different bus route or an extra bus route if a wall or a gate is put up to block access. And if we were really talking about safety, they wouldn't be asking for a wall or a gate in that spot. They would have been asking for one at their entrance. But I hope and pray that the city of Biloxi is not in the business of providing gated communities to certain communities and not all, because that's setting a very dangerous precedent. You put up a wall or a gate to block access because a few number of people complained about another neighborhood coming through the neighborhood. Well, what happens when the next neighborhood has that same request? The streets of Nelson, Carter, Atkinson, Bertucci, they're all next to schools. People go through their neighborhood to get to those schools. They complain about the traffic, the school traffic. Sometimes they're going too fast. They're not following the school zone speed limit. They complain about that. Are you going to put up a gate at their entrance as well off of Pops Ferry? Because that's the precedent that we're going toward if you go with that, Mayor. If you go with that, you're setting a very dangerous and a very bad precedent, I'm just saying. I don't have enough time to go through my whole list, but those just a few. As she stated before, please listen to both sides before you come to a judgment, before you make that call, and think about the dangerous precedent that you're setting when you separate 2 neighborhoods. We should be working to be family, to be connected. Is Biloxi really about separating people? I don't think that's Biloxi. That's not Biloxi. That's not Biloxi. If it is, I wish someone had told me that before I decided to purchase my home here. Thank you.
Thank you again. Anyone else on my left? Come on, sir. Please sign in and state your name and address.
City Council. My name is William Collins, 831 Ellington Drive. The ladies who spoke before me have spoken quite clearly on the safety aspect and the neighborly aspects of why there shouldn't be a gate. I would just like to remind the City Council of the Biloxi Land Development Ordinance, right-of-way or easement, vacation or abandonment, which was one of the questions that was on before you, I believe, about 4 years ago. Section 1 reads, the purpose of this subsection is to establish a uniform mechanism for vacating or abandoning developed and undeveloped public right-of-ways and easements when they are, quote, no longer required or needed by the city or its inhabitants. My very first important point. And point 4 on the same document, the right-of-way or easement vacation or abandonment review standards, by which I'm assuming that you folks must abide. Application for vacation or abandonment of a public right-of-way or easement shall be approved only upon a finding that all of the following standards are met. The right-of-way or easement is not now or in the foreseeable future of any benefit to the city or its inhabitants. And B, a public right-of-way shall not be vacated or abandoned unless the record owner of property abutting the subject segment of right-of-way expressly consents in writing to that vacation or abandonment. I think everyone in our neighborhood, or at least most of them, in the foreseeable future will be using that right-of-way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you again. Anyone else on my left? Okay, got two. One. Give me one. All right, Captain. Look like we had a chaplain too at that.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm going to keep it brief. I have 5 kids, 2 of which go to Biloxi Junior High, 2 of which go to North Bay. And when I heard that there is a possibility that there is a gate that will be established, creating a wall of separation between Hinton Place and Pops Ferry Landing, it was very concerning to me, mainly because we use that quite frequently. I have children that are in cross country, baseball, basketball, t-ball, need I go on. I just got back from deployment 2 months ago, and it was a very, very convenient way for my wife to be able to travel safely and conveniently and quickly to be able to take care of all of my 5 kids and all of their different activities and events. And so if this is something that's being considered, I beg that you reconsider and think more carefully about those that are on the Pops Ferry Landing who are wanting convenience and safety to be their primary means of access, vice going through Pops Ferry Landing and whatnot. So I think that's all I have to say. I'll keep it brief. Thank you.
Thank you for the service, Captain Keller. Anyone else on my left?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name's Edward Goodnight. I live at 827 Ellington Drive. Thank you for this opportunity to voice our concerns. In April of 2018, this exact issue, terrace court access, was brought before the council, then under the guise of speeding and traffic safety. Because the Biloxi Fire Chief opposed closing this access point, Terrace Court remained an important connector road to the northern and southern arterial streets for both neighborhoods. What has changed in 2022? There have been no changes to LDO 23-6, sections 1A, F2, and F4, which set guidelines for access, circulation, and connectivity. There was, unfortunately, an isolated event in Pops Ferry which required the presence of city law enforcement. This incident is being used as an opportunity to close off the Terrace Court access point, now under the guise of neighborhood safety and security. If safety and security were the true concern for Hinge Place, we should be discussing two gates, one on Terrace Court and one for the Brody entrance. However, we are only discussing the closure of one access point, Terrace Court. Property values have been used as a justification for closing Terrace Court. The situation of one neighborhood bordering another where the home values vary from $100,000 to $150,000 is not a unique one. There are multiple incidences of this situation in every coastal city, and it should not be used as a tool to isolate a neighborhood from the use of public roads. We were told that the image of Biloxi as a violent town is a concern for city leaders and that they support the closure of Terrace Court. We are all concerned about the image of Biloxi. It is a wonderful place to live and work. However, when a neighborhood of 40 homes can dictate the well-being of a neighborhood of 174 homes and do it in violation of city ordinances, one wonders what is the true underlying motive. What image are we really projecting if Terrace Court is closed? One neighborhood is restricted from using the safest way to school and sports facilities and everything south of the neighborhood. This, in its purest form, is a step backwards. Segregation, separate but equal. This is wrong and is not what America stands for, nor what anyone should tolerate. The question is, where does Biloxi stand? Thank you for the time. The residents of Pops Ferry Landing implore you, do not close Terrace Court.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on my left before I go to my right?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. President, Council, my name is Anthony Chisasi. I know some of the people in this room. I know some of you from my professional career in the city of Biloxi. I'm here as a Biloxi citizen. I live in Pops Ferry Landing. I could have easily purchased a home in Hinge Place, and I'm not bragging, I'm just stating facts. I chose to live in Pops Ferry Landing after talking to people in the neighborhood and seeing the environment that exists there, the community that they have. There are children there. I have young children in my household that also attend Biloxi schools. My wife uses Brody Road a lot to bring our children to school, to attend activities. It's very convenient. In the world that I live in, diversity and inclusion is a requirement of my job, right? And the gate going up feels like an exclusive move, that we're trying to exclude Pops Ferry Landing. We're trying to lay blame for some of the criminal activity. But if you go back and look, some of the same things that happen in Pops Ferry Landing also happen in Hinge Place, and those people aren't coming from Pops Ferry Landing. Every year, around the time school lets out, there's a wave of activity where kids are out of school, they hit all the neighborhoods across the coast and start lifting car handles, breaking into cars. The same thing happens in Hinge Place that happens in Pops Ferry Landing. And what I've seen is a lot of the people who live in both neighborhoods use an app called Nextdoor. And everybody shares that information. They share copies of their video or the fact that they have video footage. And pleased to say to Chief Miller and his team, out of the last 5 incidents over 6 years, their arrest rate of incidents that have involved my property are 4 out of 5. They've made arrests. Now, my cars have not been broken into, just attempted to, and they've still managed to piece those videos together when the team comes together, when the whole neighborhood, when people from both sides. Putting this gate up is going to cause that divisiveness that doesn't need to be there. When the children from Hingham Place, who are minors and do not have a driver's license, get on their parents' or grandparents' golf carts and drive into my neighborhood and tip over garbage cans at my home and my neighbor's home, my first inclination is not to go over there and build a gate. My first inclination is to go knock on someone's door and talk to the parents and say, hey, can we fix this? And that's how I've resolved other problems. And so it feels like they're trying to create some division, and that's not how you fix problems. The communities need to come together and work together to fix the problems. The money that could be spent on that gate can be spent on a lot of other things. You mentioned earlier, Councilman, about Mississippi Power upgrading some lights in other subdivisions. Well, Coast Electric owns the poles on my side of Pops Ferry Landing. And a lot of those lights right now are either broken or they're old school lights, and they're slowly, as they break, they're upgrading them to LED technology. That LED lights up my cul-de-sac like a football field. And so the last couple of attempts where people have come in and tried to lift door handles, they've only gone to the homes that didn't have any lighting or weren't affected by this LED light.
Sir, your time is up.
So there's other alternatives that we can do, but thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you once again. Okay, anyone else on my left before I go to my right? Okay, anyone else on my right? Anyone on my right would like to come up?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, thank you for your time to be able to listen this evening. My name's James Blease. I live at 854 Ellington Drive, which is the same area very close to where the shooting occurred. It's a tragic event, I get that, but it's an event that was allowed by irresponsible individuals, and it was promulgated by simple thugs. The person who did this, as far as I know, didn't even live in that neighborhood. And because of that, it could have happened anywhere. My stance on this is that I'm for solving problems. Traffic problems using engineered speed bumps, traffic cameras, and neighborhood watches. Crime problems using security cameras, street and home lighting, which we've already heard about, and again, neighborhood watches. I'm for coming together as a community to develop solutions to these problems that can be implemented in any neighborhood. I'm not for installing gates across public roads. A gate doesn't solve a traffic problem. It certainly eliminates the traffic, but that's a byproduct effect, not the main effect. A gate doesn't solve a crime problem. I've lived in gated communities. The gates malfunction open, people jump gates. Gates and locks, to be honest, keep honest people honest. The main effect of a gate is to segregate and separate one area from another area. There is no way around this fact. In this case, to segregate one neighborhood from another, a lower income neighborhood from a higher income neighborhood. Depending upon who has control of the gate, it also discriminates on who may or may not use the area that gate is installed. This area being a public road owned by the residents of the city of Biloxi, of which I'm one, and so are my neighbors, and so are my neighbors' children. The segregation and discrimination caused by this gate will place residents at risk due to lower response times for first responders. It will place elderly residents and inexperienced high school drivers at risk as they are forced to use Pops Ferry, Vice Brody Road. It solves nothing for any other neighborhood or community other than Hingham Place. It seems that in a society that is already so divisive that we could find a better solution than segregation of neighborhoods and discrimination of road usage. I would hope that in 2022, Biloxi residents and leaders have moved beyond segregation and discrimination. And I would hope that what we want for our children to see and for others to see is that we seek to help to improve our communities and not box off issues as other people's or you people problems. I believe we can do better in Biloxi. I believe we need to better invest our time and city taxpayer dollars in efforts to find solutions that can solve these problems for us and other communities that are struggling with these issues and not settle for knee-jerk self-preservation responses. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you once again. Anyone else on my right?
Excuse me. Good evening. All right, I come here respectfully to the council and to the mayor. I'm nervous, so I wrote a few notes. I don't know if that's going to help or not. I would just like to say I agree 100% with everything that has been said so far tonight. They probably articulated it better than I can, but I want to state that I'm a resident at 852 Ellington Drive. My name is Kevin McMahon. I'm representing my family. I have 3 boys that live in the neighborhood, ages 7 months, 13 and 15. I'm against this gate, big time against the gate. Really, the points I would make have been made already, but I would like to flesh out a couple of details in issues that I have with the traffic control and the redirection of traffic for us. We use that access to Brody to make a simple right turn and have direct access to our municipal facilities. That includes the A.J. Holloway complex, the high school complex, the junior high complex, where I have children who go to school there. Okay, that's our main access. It's the safest access. To give you more details and what it would force us to do, including our high school drivers, our younger drivers, instead of having that easy right turn on Brody to the high school every day, they would then be forced to make a left turn across essentially highway traffic, where it's 40 miles an hour on Pops Ferry, but it's, I mean, that's a suggestion, I think, on the speed limit through there, 40 miles an hour. So we would have to turn left across oncoming traffic for young drivers en route to high school, as opposed to a much safer route that we have already. I would hate for anything to happen to a young driver, a high school driver, or anybody else in our community because of this huge traffic control. You know, there's been no studies on this that I know of. The second point, that was my first point. I'm making 2 points. The second one is the placement of the gate has never made sense. For those that don't know, they are proposing to put the gate at the, 4 years ago they told us it was to reduce speeding. Well, where they put the gate, it's on the shortest segment of street in the neighborhood with 2 stop signs right in between. That's not where people were speeding, okay? There's only one reason why they want to put the gate there, and that's because the medium value of the houses on one side of the gate are a certain value, and on the other side of the gate, they're a certain value, 150,000 difference, maybe something like that. I'm here in front of you tonight to tell you that although the houses have a different value, all of us in the community as people, we have the same value, and that our young drivers and everyone needs to be considered in that, and the decisions that are being made on this gate that I am opposed to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else on my right? Yes, come on up. Please sign in. State your name for the record.
Mr. Mayor, council members, well, we've heard everything about the gate. I'm here to talk about fairness. We said Pledge of Allegiance, and it says liberty and justice for all. Us in Pops Ferry, we don't feel we're getting that right. If the residents of Hingen Place has the right to have a council member inside their home and have a meeting, how fair is that to us in Pops Ferry? When Hingen Place has a problem, They get whatever they want. They have several stop signs. They have a problem. They get speed bumps. We don't get any. I've lived there for 20 years, and nothing has ever changed. We had a meeting with a council member on Sunday, and every time we had a complaint, his only answer was, we don't have it in the budget. We don't have it in the budget. We don't have it in the budget. Just this week alone, on Terrace, they put a ticker tape that goes to Hingen. There is 5 times as much traffic coming off Pops Ferry and down Brentwood, which, like people said, they have kids. To protect their kids, they need speed bumps. All I hear from the council is, it's not in the budget, it's not in the budget, it's not in the budget. All of us in Biloxi pay taxes, and we expect the same fairness. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on my right?
Hi, good evening. My name's Jessica Peterson, and I'm 855 Brentwood Drive. And I do have to say, I just heard about the gate situation, and I was floored. I could not imagine this actually happening in today's world. It feels very elitist. Hengen Place is not a country club gated community. They have no community amenities that they need a gate to enclose. It is a through street. I just called traffic council this past week regarding getting on the docket for speed bumps on Brentwood, because I don't like the traffic. I think people are getting a little too speedy, and I think it's getting dangerous. However, putting up a gate to separate 2 neighborhoods based on the wealth or the value of the home, it seems a little extreme, and it's it's blatantly elitist. I mean, it's like some perceived aristocracy lives in a 1-block area. So I am against the gate, of course. Just found this out, and I've lived all over the country, and I think this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But with all due respect, I would like to just be on the record, and thank you very much. I have sent an email as well.
Okay, is there anyone else on my right? Anyone in the back? Last call. Come on up, ma'am. Come on up. Pratt's on up there.
My name is Linda Fairley, and I live at 1579 Rachel Drive. I've lived there for 20 years. I've seen the beginning of a subdivision when it was nothing but land behind me, and we were over half or 3/4 built out. I have also seen the changes, and personally, I had not realized that this much animosity still existed. I put up with both sides. I get aggravated when there's too many cars parked on the street, or I get aggravated when the kids fly down the street. I live right at a corner of another street, and my house is on Rachel Drive. And it scares me to death when the kids fly through on golf carts and they don't obey the signs. But all of this is a part of living. And I know the incident that happened this past weekend is the driving force behind this happening again. If you'll go back and look at the records from the first time this was brought up to close with a gate. Same principle. We had to go before the Planning Commission. We had to go through all these meetings. They did studies. And at that time, Hingham Place did not have near as many houses as it has now. That's true. But we also had to abide by the rules and regulations. And it started with the Planning Commission. And you can see I'm very nervous. It started with the Planning Commission, and we had to go through these hearings, and we had to do this, and we had to do that, and we went through all of it. And if you go back and look at the record, it was determined after everything was over and done with that what the street had a right to be there. It was platted that way when they built it. It was a part of when Hingham Place was designed. You know, it wasn't like we said, oh, well, this street's here and you have to have it in your subdivision. It's platted that way in your records. And the only reason I know some of this is my husband was a civil engineer before he passed away here in the city of Biloxi. And so, excuse me, therefore, they were not able to close it then because the Planning Commission determined that the road should exist by investigation and looking through the things.
Ma'am, your time is up.
If you would go back and look in your records to determine how and why they came to those decisions.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your comment. Your time is up. Is there anyone else in the room would like to speak? Anyone else? Last call. With that being said, I want to turn it over to Councilor Robert Deming III for final comments and citizen comments area.
Thank you. I want to make a couple of comments. First, there is no formal resolution for a gate, is there? So it would be irresponsible for me to say that I don't support that if there were one. However, I appreciate everyone being here and making cogent arguments tonight. Last week, or the last meeting, we saw a room filled with people that were on the other side of this argument. So the reason why I'm speaking right now is not for this issue, but I want the administration and the rest of the members of the council to take a look at the participation we've gotten this evening and the last meeting, and how much more participation we could get if we had more meetings. I know we talk about it a lot, and we view these meetings of the night as being inconvenient for us, but I think they're extremely convenient for the people, and they pay our salaries. So I'm going to ask the council next week to entertain a resolution for these tonight meetings as Dixie's resolution was presented a few weeks ago. I thought we had great participation over this interim period in these meetings tonight. I hope you support that.
Thank you. I offered an extended invitation for Councilman Deming. Anyone else want to say anything in fairness? Okay. Again, this closes citizen comments. I want to thank you all for coming out, expressing and voicing your opinions. I really, really appreciate everyone who came out, voiced their opinion and concerns. Just like Councilman Deming said, we heard all the voices on one side. And now that we've heard the voices on the other side, that gives us a lot to think about and a lot of things that we need to take into consideration. So again, I just want to thank you once again, and we appreciate it. Okay, I want to go ahead and move on to the policy agenda, getting into ordinance. First of all, we're going to start with ordinance A, second reading. Ms. Carey?
Ordinance to amend sections of the land development ordinance pertaining to stormwater pond landscaping.
That was moved by Councilman Barrett and second by Councilman Deming. Councilman Barrett, you have anything to say?
No comments.
Okay, Councilman Deming? Okay, anything else by any other council member? With that none, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Ordinance A pass. We're going to move on to ordinance B, second reading. Ms. Carey?
Ordinance to approve a zoning map amendment for 6.9 acres of land from neighborhood business to regional business for property located at 13193 Huxley Road.
Okay, that was moved by Councilman Baird, second by Dr. Tisdale. Councilman Baird?
The only thing I'd like to say, the person requesting this called me today and was unable to make the meeting. None of the citizens in the area were opposed to it. Some did request possibly looking at widening this road. To be honest, I don't know if it meets the standards that, we're supposed to have. It's barely large enough for one vehicle to get down. So if that's something that we could look at doing, is widening this road, that would be great. Other than that, I support this completely.
Second by Councilman Tisdale. Dr. Tisdale?
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Okay, any other councilman?
I just want to ask, what did you say about widening the road? They're going to widen the road or not?
None of the residents are opposed to this rezoning. When they called me asking about it, they just ask that I try to get the road widened, that it's a very narrow road. So that's all.
Have you done that to put that into?
I just asked them. Yeah, I just got calls this week from residents asking to widen the road. So yes, that's, I just addressed that.
How much wider would you make it? You don't know?
Probably double what it is right now. Double what it is now, if that's possible. I don't know what the easements are on the road, but if that's possible.
Okay, that's it.
I just asked. Sound like a good idea.
Any other comments by any other council member? With that being said, I'm gonna call for the question. All in favor? 6-0, motion carries. I need a motion on the consent agenda, moved by Councilman Lawrence. I need a second. Second by Dr. Tisdale. Mr. Lawrence, questions?
Yeah, a couple questions. On G, we giving a 10,000 contribution to who?
I really need Peter in here to tell you about that. Let me get him back in here.
They said we had 20,000 in the fund, but we contributed 10,000 to somebody. Just wondering who it was.
Oh, that was I have a little bit of knowledge of it.
Very little.
Yeah. The Biloxi Economic Foundation is a foundation. There he is, Mr. Peter. Glad you come in. You're right on time. Peter, we have a question about Resolution G, the Greater Economic Development Foundation, the one we reestablished.
Yes, sir. I think as part of the budget from last year, the non-departmental, the council budgeted $20,000 for the year. They were just getting started, and we said we wanted them to do certain things, and we wanted them to reestablish themselves to do some things for Biloxi, sort of in the capacity of Main Street, but a little more sophisticated type things. The major thing they've actually been able to accomplish when, as part of the Go Mesa funds and the legislation that just occurred, the Bark Building and the Crest and that development, they received $2 million from the legislature to help the downtown development of Biloxi. They needed a nonprofit to administer these funds, like an SMPDD. They needed somebody like that. And this group was able to step in and do it for a much lower administrative fee, and to be able to do it. I mean, this group did a lot of things back in the 80s and 90s. You know, they got sort of sent over into the incubator and became a landlord for the for the incubator and got wrapped into all of that. The incubator is no more. This is a nonprofit with assets of their own. They own 50% of Rebel Boat Works. They've always been tied into the city, but essentially they outlaid from their funds. They updated the housing study this year, about 4,000. They put in the money for the Crest Alley Ground Zero redo to get that done. And this is essentially, they're asking for half of what's been budgeted.
Well, the 10,000 goes to them to do what?
Well, it goes to them just like Main Street was budgeted 20,000, and they just filed a resolution asking for their 20,000. And, you know, I don't know where that went, but.
If I may, Peter, I think I can help out a little bit now that the bell went off.
Sure.
To help reestablish, because this group is, it has to help reestablish. And I think we talked earlier about the state receiving the $1.8 billion, and we, as a council, have started going after grant opportunities for the 1.8, especially in the economic development area. And this gives us an opportunity to have someone to hold the financing that once we're awarded those grants, that we'll be able to distribute it properly in an agency to do it.
Just trying to figure out what we do with 10,000, if they're gonna do us any good or not. That's the thing, you know, we always spending 10,000. I don't know if we're tied into the coding thing. So you get giving them 10,000 to help them establish the coding academy.
Right.
I was making sure we had these as separate things.
Well, so far they've outlaid about $9,000 that's gone to the Crest Alley renovation. Remember what that looked like before, Ground Zero renovation. It's now all landscaped. That's a city right of way. The city we could have paid that out of general fund ourselves, but they paid for it. We also had the housing study done a few years ago that establishes, you know, we have 19,000 jobs and 9,000 places to live on the peninsula. Well, that was 4 years old, and we had developers looking to do new housing. They're like, do you have a current housing study? And coincidentally, they had just paid $4,000 to get that updated, and we're able to put that in the developer's hands like the next day. So, I mean, they're not taking the money and paying any salaries. That was the old foundation. Remember, they had to raise $70,000 just to pay their executive director. These are all local business owners. There's no salaries. The money they're using we may suggest, hey, the coding academy is a good thing. They're putting in $5,000 of their own money, not asking the city for reimbursement on that, but they're putting $5,000 into the coding academy. So, I mean, they have assets of their own, and whether you use SMPDD or Main Street or the Knight Foundation, you've got to use a nonprofit to do some of these things to run the grants through. And our thought, before they disbanded after the incubator, let's get back and get the Biloxi people back involved and get their mission focused on doing things in Biloxi.
You finished selling yet?
What's that?
I said, you finished selling yet? You sound like a bad salesman over there.
Well, you're a hard guy to sell to.
We just got another layer, and we're gonna use somebody else to hold some money if they get the money. Now, that's the key. And then they'll have to deal with the city. I mean, what they're gonna do with the money? This group gets $1 million.
They're basically reimbursing themselves for what they've already put out for two projects that benefited the city.
No, I'm talking about if they get $1 million, how can that help us?
Well, that's going to the developer, but somebody's got to be the administrator and make sure the receipts are there, and they've got to apply. It's just like any kind of a grant. When we get a Tidelands grant, we've got to document the expenses. We've got to submit the expenses, receive the money. So they're going to do this on behalf of Lee Young's group. Lee Young's group got $2 million to renovate the Bark Building. Now, the legislature's not just going to send that money to Lee Young. They have to send it to a qualified nonprofit. And this, just to be a nonprofit, that takes 2 years to establish, and they're a qualified, bona fide nonprofit. And they're eligible for other grants too, but they're not applying for grants.
All right, that's good enough.
Okay.
One more question on, we took out $210,000 from the citywide, the street repair. That's our project 1025. How much money we have left in the street repair money? The 210 was to pay out the people that finished their job. So how much money do we have left in the project 1025?
Are you talking about item F, Foxtrot?
Yeah, I guess that's it.
All right, here's the backstory, Councilman. In 2016, we cut a deal with the Merrill Land Company that we would provide pipe, and they would design and build a water line, sewer line up to that very large development, the Emerald Lake Estates. And the other part of the deal is that we also committed to paving the streets when they were finished. So the bell rang here about a month ago, and they told us, okay, we're ready now for you to pave the streets. And sure, that's the deal we had. We had to go pave the streets. The problem was we ran into I talked about it earlier. We get an issue with our paving contractors right now where their pricing is below the cost for them to actually pave. So they're kind of digging their heels in on paving. They couldn't do the Emerald Lake Estates job for the price that would have been done, that would have been for them to do it according to their contract. So, but we were in a time crunch. We had to pave these streets. So what we did, instead of paying to pave the streets, we paid the developer to pave the streets in the amount of the dollar value of the paving we would have had to do. And that was paid for from the citywide paving account, which is the account we would have paid the paving from. But instead, we just wrote a check to the developer who's paving the streets now. Does that?
To meet our commitment.
I
So
understand
we had a commitment, and instead of honoring the commitment by paving the streets, we honored the commitment by paying them to pave the streets.
But the 210,000, we paid them what they deserved the money, had no problem with that. I was just asking what you had left in the citywide budget for the.
I can't answer that
Okay.
sitting at this table, but I can send it to you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, no problem. I had no problem paying the bill, right? That wasn't the question. I was just wondering how much money we had left to deal with other repairs for streets and that. That's all. And the other one, H on the Coding Academy, is that a one-time deal or is that gonna be an annual event for them? It's just a one-time deal? 10,000 help them get started or whatever? And they're gonna put it in the old Western Pharmacy right there on the corner of Porter? Okay.
In your ward.
Yeah, here you go. And on the ball field, I know you said it was a carryover.
Carryover from last year.
Mine was listed at 2 M's on here. I know it's supposed to be N. And the city puts up 25,000 a year for repairs at the stadium, and they supposed to put up 25,000. Now, you said last year,
50,000 is what we're trying to do from last year to come to this year.
and they matched the 50,000 we put up too? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that's it? All right. Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming? Come on, think hard.
Go for it.
The clock is ticking.
Come on. It's not gonna change anytime soon.
Okay. Dr. Tisdale?
Yeah, on item 5O, the old Highway 67 bridge west of Cedar Lake Road, that's not the Cedar Lake Bridge, or is that the Cedar Lake Bridge? Do you have,
There are two projects we're submitting, and they're listed in that resolution. One of them is the repair to the Pops Ferry Bridge. That's our number one priority.
Right.
Number two priority is the old Highway 67 road in Woolmarket. Your partner there can tell you about it, where it is. That's one Rackley's doing.
Just west of Hudson.
okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay, good.
67.
And then just, and going back to a question George asked about the ballpark. So we're just moving money from one fund to another?
Right.
Associated with the ballpark?
That was stacked up at the end of last.
Gotcha, okay, that had accumulated in that when it's restricted, we need an okay. Okay, I'm good, I'm done, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it, Dr. Tisdale?
That's it.
Oh, all right. Councilman Barrett?
Nothing.
None, and I have none. With that being said, I'll do the exceptions afterward. All in favor? 6-0. Any exceptions?
No.
None? Ms. Newman? Deming? Tisdale?
No, sir.
Barrett? No exceptions at all. All right, motion carries. Routine, no code enforcement hearing, no Mr. Creel today. All right.
Routine.
Routine agenda.
I move it.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence. Second by Dr. Tisdale.
We got
Any questions?
a weekly report here. Walt?
Evening, council. So MEMA was a little bit delayed in getting some money to us. The delay was granting us another $59,000 in reimbursement. So we should have that by the end of the month. Instead of about $489,000, we'll be around $561,000. So there's a little bit of delay. It was not related to infrastructure. They were closing out some projects related to Katrina and getting a last set of funds, but we're still in good shape.
So we pretty much even. We just a little bit slow getting a few checks in.
We're at least always 60 days ahead.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on the routine agenda? That being said, all in favor? 5-0. Mr. Baird is out the office. I need a motion to
Second.
Recess.
Recess, moved by Mr. Lawrence, second by Mr. Deming. All in favor? 5-0. Motion carries. We're in recess.